You have Morris versus Frederick. You have Bethel versus Fraser. Tinker versus Des Moines. And Hazelwood versus Coleman. Now you all may be familiarized with all these cases by now, and as you know, they were presented to the U.S. Supreme Court in order to be decided whether the actions taken within the school system were constitutional or not. Now this leads me to the question: how are the limitations of students' rights an illustration of the First Amendment in U.S. public schools? Am I claiming that schools must limit First Amendment in public schools in order to provide a safer learning environment as well as an education of quality? Now, to start you off, the First Amendment, everybody's born a U.S. citizen are guaranteed these rights to the First Amendment. Now, the First Amendment, also known as freedom of expression, but freedom of expression breaks down into 5 parts, which is freedom of religion, freedom to assemble, freedom to petition, freedom of speech, as well as freedom of press. So now, in my claim, I stated that schools are responsible for providing a safe learning environment, and this means limiting distractions, which distractions come in many ways, and this includes obscene language. Now, just take a look at the case Bethel versus Fraser, where a student, Matthew Fraser, was suspended for giving a speech at a school assembly that included indecent content. This court ruled that the school did not violate any of his rights due to the use of obscene language. Now, although the First Amendment guarantees the right to freedom of speech, there are still restrictions against each form of expression, and these restrictions are called time, place, and manner restrictions. Time, place, and manner restrictions modify when and where an individual may express themselves, as well as how they can go about doing so. For example, vulgar speech is not a protected form of expression under the First Amendment because of these restrictions. Now, you look back at Bethel School District versus Fraser. The school was justified for suspending the individual due to the obscenity of the said speech through TPM restrictions. That is seeing it that as though a high school assembly or even a classroom is not a place for sexual references and indecent remarks directed towards an audience of teenage students. Now, there have been cases in which schools have been unjustified in the decision made to punish the student. And this is a case of Tinker versus Des Moines, when a couple of students wore black armbands to support the Vietnam War. However, they were suspended for this, but the court did rule that the school did indeed violate the students' rights, saying that the armbands were a non-disruptive form of symbolic speech. Now, after that ruling, the Supreme Court established the Tinker test, and this states that public schools cannot legally restrict free expression unless it threatens the material and substantial disruption of the educational process or invades the right of others. So now, although the First Amendment are not guaranteed to full extent in public schools, it is the school's responsibility to focus on its sole mission, which is education, meaning there simply is no time for disruptions that may spring from freedom of expression. Now, through my research, the implication would be that limitation of the First Amendment in U.S. public schools helps balance the rights of all students and provides a safer learning environment as well as an increase in the quality of education. Now, what questions do you have?
All right, 2 questions for you. Here's the first question. How valid and reliable are the sources that you use, and then how do you know?
I believe my sources to be very reliable, as some of them were taken directly from Supreme Court cases, as well as time and place manner restriction article that was provided by the instructor.
All right, and next question. What advice would you have for other researchers doing this topic?
You definitely want to get strengthen your knowledge on Supreme Court cases having to do with the topic of First Amendment in public schools. I believe that'll help you a lot, and so you can use examples. Thank you.
All right, thanks.